Hi, my name is Swami Chaitanya. Welcome to Smokin' with Swami. Today we have a very special guest, Amanda Reiman, who has so many accomplishments and so many things she does, it would take most of the show just to list them, right? Are you still teaching at Cal, right?
I am for this semester. This is my last semester.
Okay,
after
right.
10 years. I'll be transitioning out of that role.
Okay, but you were for many years also with Drug Policy Alliance.
Correct.
And you were head of that for a while?
No, that's always been Ethan, although he's leaving as well. But I was the manager of marijuana law and policy. So I oversaw the organization's marijuana reform work.
Oh, wow, that's really important. And how long were you doing that?
I was there for 5 years.
5 years. So now you're transitioning out of that, is that right you're saying?
I am.
Big changes in your whole life.
There's big changes coming. There's big changes. So the biggest change is that we're moving up to Mendocino, to Redwood Valley. And I'm now working with Kana as their community manager. And we are opening a brand new, unbelievably gorgeous 80-acre cannabis institute in Redwood Valley to help the local farmers meet their needs in terms of processing, testing, manufacturing, legal support, accounting support, and also have a place where the public can come and learn more about cannabis.
Well, that's amazing. Now, we've been to this place. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's the old Fetzer Winery tucked into some mountains and many, many buildings, quaint little old buildings and so on. But it's going to be quite a project to renovate all that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we're working with a great firm in San Francisco that does sustainable engineering. And our goal is to bring the whole campus off-grid in 5 years.
Off-grid?
Yes.
Oh, that means solar power?
Solar, rain catchment, the whole 9 yards.
So the whole concept is kind of a greening, sustainable concept, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's also really happening in the farming community also, working more towards regenerative agriculture. But that's not what we want to talk about today. But you're also going to be talking at the MAPS conference coming up real soon, right?
Yes. So MAPS is next week. It's one of my all-time most favorite conferences, and not just because it's in Oakland, but I will be speaking about a research study that I recently completed on looking at the use of cannabis as a substitute for opiate-based pain medications among the medical cannabis patient population.
Well, this is super important. We know there's this epidemic, but you're talking about cannabis, right? So this is Smoking with Swami, right? So you got your bong here. Now notice she's got some ice cubes in there to really cool it off, right?
Yes, I like the ice cubes. And the hemp wick is very important because you want to taste the cannabis and not the lighter.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe we should simultaneously, because I use a lighter just to light the joint. So here we go. All right, so now it's officially Smoking with Swami. But I want to get back to this opioid thing because you may know Nikki just had a hip operation and she had this synthetic opiate or narcotic, which is, what is it called? Tramadol, right? Which they said, oh, that's not an opiate, but it actually sort of turns into it in your body or something like that. Is that right?
Well, I think that, when you look at what we give people post-surgery, we're trying to manage pain. And when we look at how the current pharmaceutical system manages pain, it's opiate-based pain medication. I mean, that is the protocol. That is the norm. And I myself had knee surgery about 6 or 7 years ago, and they gave me, Vicodin or, Darvocet.
This is kind of required, isn't it, that the government...
It's not required, but it's the protocol. They know that people leave surgery with pain. They want to manage that pain.
Right.
This has been determined as the most effective way for people to manage pain. And they don't really think about it. And I think one of the dangers is that the public thinks that if they follow doctors' directions in taking those medications, that there's no risk of overdose or dependence. And that's not accurate.
You could take
exactly. You could take as directed, and you still may develop dependence over time.
Right.
And so I think it's important that people, before they even start using those prescriptions, think about potential alternatives, and that opiates should really be a last defense, and cannabis should be the first defense. But you always
believe your doctor anyway. The doctor's not going to do you any wrong, stuff like that.
Exactly.
So they told Nikki that, no, there's nothing here. But she was only on it for like 3 or 4 days, something like that. And then she went cold turkey and has horrible symptoms of withdrawal and so on. And like I just said to you before, I was reading these articles about the opioid thing, and you read like a whole long article, and they never once mention the word cannabis or marijuana.
No,
right?
of course not.
So why is it so good for this?
Well, it's good for so many reasons for this. I mean, it's interesting. When I started doing research on this, I was looking to see how long people had been talking about this. And interestingly, I found an article in The Lancet, which is an academic journal, from 1889, and it was called Hemp as a cure for opium sickness. 1889.
Wow.
And was talking about how this doctor was giving hemp products to his patients who had opium dependence and was finding amazing results.
Wow.
So this is absolutely not a new concept. It was revisited in the 1970s by Todd McArea, a very famous psychiatrist, who found it to be very helpful for his patients who were alcoholics. And so when we look at why this works, I think there's a couple reasons. I mean, first of all, let's talk about what withdrawal looks like, right? It's nausea, it's muscle tremors, it's irritability, it's trouble sleeping, it's upset stomach. Let's think about
all the things
cannabis. Where have I heard that
Amazing.
before, right? So one of the reasons why people have trouble moving past opiate dependence is that the withdrawals get so bad that they relapse.
Right.
So if we can give cannabis to people to help them get through that withdrawal period,
Right.
I think we'll have much more success with people maintaining that permanent behavior change.
Right. Well, Nikki said that the pain before her hip operation was so intense and excruciating over time that as soon as the operation was done, the pain level was so minimum that the pain from the operation wasn't really that significant.
Well, we don't have a very good understanding of pain. And that's one of the problems. Pain is such a subjective feeling. And we know that women have a much higher tolerance for pain than men, which is why women give birth. We know that even within genders, there's variabilities for pain. And so it's really hard to really treat that pain. So what they're doing is they're treating it all with a sledgehammer.
Right.
Because they figure that some people have sledgehammer-sized pain. Most people have nail-sized pain, but they don't take the time to differentiate that. They treat it all the same way with that opiate.
Well, they were suggesting that post-operative that they carry on for 2 to 3 weeks of this tramadol, right? And by then they really are hooked, right?
Right. Then it's very easy to
and then they have to go
develop
down to
dependence.
Vicodin or what are those other ones that are called? And I've met people, especially up in Mendocino County. This old guy is now living with his daughter. Why is he living with his daughter? He comes from Ohio, and boom, they can't get cannabis there. He was on Vicodin or OxyContin or something like that, and was dying because of it.
Yeah, we see a lot of cannabis refugees. So we see a lot of folks who come to legal states or medically legal states because they're not able to get their needs met where they live. And it's really sad to think that somebody would have to choose between kind of their home and their community and their health.
Right,
And we see it a lot with children as well. So parents coming to Colorado and other places so that they can treat their children. And the fact that we're putting families in this situation, separating families just so they can try to get treatment for their children is very egregious. It's very inhumane.
Well, I think the other thing is doctors are beginning to know that this is the best treatment for many things. It might not cure it, but it does alleviate the symptoms and makes life bearable, like epilepsy and so on. But now doctors are actually prohibited from giving the patients the thing that everyone knows actually works. So it's really senseless on the part of our government to do that. And it's become the fact that the government is causing pain.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're in the business of that. I mean, if you look at our healthcare system, it's not set up to cure people. It's set up to keep people mildly ill. I mean, this
is very radical what you're saying.
Well, think about it. If everybody that went to the doctor to get help got better, then they go out of business. So the fact that our healthcare system is based in a capitalist, in the pharmaceutical system too, and the drug treatment centers,
and the hospitals,
all of those places, their success relies on their clients needing their services.
And return visits.
So when you see things like drug treatment centers, which, the relapse rate is like 4 out of 5 people. I mean, their success is just abysmal. They stay in business because people come back 5, 6, 7 times, and they get better for a little while. And it's the same thing with going to doctors.
But they don't know where else to go either, these people, because of the prejudice and the propaganda against cannabis.
Right, but there are starting to be some options. So one other thing I'm involved in right now that I'm really excited about is this new treatment center down in Los Angeles called High Sobriety. And it's the first treatment center that actually uses cannabis as a medication-assisted treatment for people going through withdrawals for opiates and alcohol. It's an inpatient treatment center. It has a psychiatrist that does the intake and that monitors the cannabis use, but it's to help people get through withdrawal.
Right.
And then once they're through withdrawal, they have the option of continuing to use cannabis during their treatment to help them open up, talk about what's bothering them, deal with the traumas.
Just relax socially.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's radical, right? Like we've got folks in all of these like colleges across the country being like, these people are crazy. They're giving giving addicts marijuana. What's the world coming to?
Yeah, right.
But we know that having someone use a non-lethal drug is a great first step if they're currently using a lethal one.
Right.
And that's it.
But you mentioned this test that people had done about the opiate in 1888, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read that the state of Ohio commissioned a cannabis study in 1850, right? And then there was this 1880, and then O'Shaughnessy's came out from India, and that was a huge report in the 1870s,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there was the LaGuardia report also in New York, which was
and the
what
Schaefer Commission report.
Yeah, right.
And the Institute of Medicine report in 1999.
Right. And then even the Attorney General or the Attorney for the Food and FDA or something like that says it's one of the best palliative medicines and so on. So again and again and again, the medical profession has tried to bring this into mainstream medicine where it used to be.
Well, because it's never been about science. I mean, that's the thing, is that once we figured out that we could use drug laws to control populations of people, then the science went out the window. Like, it wasn't about science anymore. It was about using it as a tool to instill fear in people so that they would turn against the consumer. And that's what it's been used for ever since.
But that happened at the end of Prohibition of alcohol.
That happened before the end of Prohibition of alcohol. That happened, I mean, first with Japanese immigration into San Francisco with laws around opium smoking. And then again with Mexican and Indian immigration at the turn of the century and the talks about marijuana and the marijuana laws starting. So as soon as we realized that we could make a drug that a certain group of people like to use illegal and therefore stop those people, search them, detain them, prevent them from being successful, we were like, oh, this is great. Like, this way we look like we're going after this dangerous drug, but in actuality, we're going after these people. I mean, the crack baby scare in the 1980s, like, that was all bullshit propaganda. I mean, yes, there were babies born who were dependent on drugs, just like there's always been, mostly alcohol, to be honest. But what they would do is they would bring these journalists in to show these babies that were like flailing about and having all these problems. That wasn't to like, you know, help the babies. It was to demonize poor black single mothers in the inner city.
Or something
Exactly. So it was a tool. And you know, they know that. And I absolutely think that the new administration knows that. And I think we are going to see some things very remnant of Richard Nixon and his crackdown on marijuana because it was, you know, fostering free thought and people questioning authority. And given the authoritarianism that's come in with this new regime, I feel that they feel drugs are a threat because they open people's minds and make them not want to fall in line. And so I could see kind of that similar rhetoric coming back. You already see it from Jeff Sessions. You know, marijuana users aren't good people, that marijuana leads to heroin. I mean, it's like 1960s all over again.
And that's been debunked many times.
Right, but see, the difference between now and the 1960s is that in the 1960s, we only had like 12% support for legalization in this country. Now we have over 60%. So back then, they could say this stuff and the public would be like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of sounds right. Now people are like, what? I mean, I read an article today that Jeff Sessions was shocked at the pushback he got for his negative comments on marijuana. He was like, I didn't expect the public to feel this way. So that's what's different now. And so I think that's what is going to help us, is that we have the public behind us. Even the public doesn't use marijuana the way we've never had before.
Well, but every family has someone now in their family who's had immediate relief just from a salve or a tincture or something like that. And they say, hey, I don't care what you say, this stuff works.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, what you're mirroring is the gay rights movement. And you know,
many people have said that.
And there came a point where it was like everyone knew someone that they cared about who was gay. And so then it became a lot harder to support policies that would marginalize and demonize that population.
Yeah, not as a person, but as an object.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So that's the whole thing now, especially seniors are saying, wow, this really helps me get to sleep.
They're the fastest growing patient population. And I'm so excited about that because they are the ones that are most at risk from this whole pharmaceutical thing. They are taken advantage of by the pharmaceutical industries. The pharmaceutical industries treat them like children. They just dole out a bunch of pills. They think they're not going to ask questions. They have insurance or Medicare that's going to pay for the pharmaceutical drugs. And they need cannabis. They really need cannabis.
So I want to talk a little bit about the cannabis that people need, which is in a thing of having purity be an issue. Now that's come up because of various people exposing that, oh, this is pure pesticide free, but in the end actually it's tested, it's got it. So one of the things that we're working for with farmers up in Mendocino and all over the Emerald Triangle is realizing that it's actually, we need to go beyond organic even, right? So those people who want their organic tomato or banana, you really should be sure you're having organic cannabis. But even that has to say that beyond organic to make it really biological, that it's living soil, that you're really
Yes.
understanding
Yes.
what's going on.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And I think that's kind of when we educate the public about what it means to grow cannabis a certain way and
Right.
how that impacts the plant. I think that's a huge step. And one of the organizations I'm working with now, the International Cannabis Farmers Association, that we just started, I'm the secretary of the board of directors. Kristen Nevedal is the chair of the board of directors. We have an all-female board of lady
Female
farmers and
plant.
scientists, female plant, female board of directors. And so we're working a lot on this research on appellations and really looking at the soils that are being used to grow cannabis in the different parts of the Emerald Triangle and the climates and how that impacts the plant.
Right.
Because we need to educate people.
Right.
And we need people to understand the uniqueness and specialness of obtaining cannabis from a certain place rather than just assuming that it's, you know, it's grown somewhere, I guess.
Well, just like grapes, certain grapes grow better in certain many
absolutely.
climates.
Like
and so on.
Pinots from the
Right.
Willamette Valley
Right,
in
exactly.
Oregon.
Right.
So it's the same thing.
So then we're also finding out that the plants that you want to cultivate that are with higher CBD, they often really like more shady situation to grow and so on. So over the years now we're starting to find out, and the thing is that in the past the biggest secret in the whole cannabis thing was who is the grower.
Oh yeah,
Right? That's the
yeah.
biggest secret, right?
It was like the craziest thing. I mean, you walk into a dispensary and all of the cannabis is branded as the dispensary. I always used to say it's like walking to Safeway and all the wine is like Safeway Merlot, Safeway Chardonnay,
right.
Safeway Pinot.
But that's, see, for the protection of the grower, the miracle ounce got to the patient guaranteed, but
Right.
you had to protect the grower.
Oh
right?
yeah, but it's
Totally.
different now.
Well, sort of different because
Well,
growers are still getting busted.
No, they're
but
still
it's-
getting busted,
But
but-
now we're coming out and say, hey, I'm a grower. And not only I'm a grower, but this is the way I grow.
Right. And well, that's what's so exciting. I mean, I just look at the evolution at the Emerald Cup over the past like 7 years, right? And when you first would go, like, you know, years ago, you would see just the farmers would just have these jars with their cannabis in it.
Yeah.
And they would talk to you about how they grew it and you could have a conversation, but nobody had a brand. It was just kind of these jars. And then I went last year and it's totally different.
Where's our jars? We have our jars over there.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they're over there. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's branding, but it's
Right.
also talking about how they grow and their processes and being proud of their
Absolutely.
polyculture
Right.
and their living soil and the biodynamic. And that is something that I feel is just coming to light. And it makes me very excited because there's nothing I love more than hearing someone who's really passionate about something get to fully bask in it.
Yeah.
And that's
well,
what I
we're
feel is
learning.
coming.
That's the other exciting thing about it. All the growers are simultaneously learning about this stuff.
Right.
And it's so cutting edge, I like to say. It's so cutting edge that the cavemen grew like this.
Right. Well, no, it's funny that you should say that because one of the things I do when I present about cannabis, especially to students, because, you know, college students, a lot of them now are born after 1996 and really don't remember marijuana prohibition.
Right.
So what I tell them is I show them this timeline and I explain that from 3000 BC to 1937, marijuana was nothing but a medicine. It was a therapeutic plant that was used across cultures for multiple reasons. From 1937 to 1996, when California became the first state, it was a dangerous, illegal drug with no medical value. That is a very small point in history compared to its history as a medicine. And even though we were born during Prohibition, so we tend to just see that Prohibition as forever, in reality, it's like a blip. It's like, my boyfriend figured it out once, that if you put like all of the history of cannabis on a calendar, we were really into Neil deGrasse Tyson at the time. You put it all on a calendar, that Prohibition is like one long weekend.
Right.
That you want to forget.
Right. A bummer weekend.
A bummer weekend where we were like,
Well,
oh,
actually,
marijuana will be illegal this
I
weekend.
want
And
to
then
go
we're like,
back.
no,
Now,
that's
you
stupid.
said 3,000 years, and some research that I've read is at least 10,000 years to have archaeological finds with cannabis there. And they found them with shamans and so on.
Yes.
And so, but I think there's always been a dimension of cannabis which has been spiritual.
Oh,
not
absolutely.
just medical.
Oh,
And in
absolutely.
fact, to my mind, a way of thinking that the real basis for its healing properties is the spiritual energy that is contained within the plant itself, right? And the reverence for which people have had for so many years, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think what you're describing for me is why sun-grown is so important.
Yes.
Because I feel that there's the synergy between the natural light of the sun and the plant and the earth, like all of those things together.
Right.
If you take out a piece of that, it's not that you destroy the whole thing, but it's not whole.
It's not whole, that's the thing. And it's 8 months in the sun.
Right.
not just 3 months in lights indoors and so on. So yeah, it's energized by the sun and the soil, and so that's why we call ours sun, moon, and star grown, right?
I
It's
love
like,
that.
it's totally out in nature, and the birds are singing on it, on the trees, and so on and so forth. So, well, we're kind of running out of time, but can you say a little bit what you're going to be doing with Kana and why that's so exciting for you?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we're opening this Flow Cannabis Institute in Redwood Valley. And this is really important to me because I am very much wanting to see the small farmer be successful. When I look at the landscape of cannabis in 20 years, I don't want it to be this big companies that have kind of taken over and everyone has kind of been usurped into them. And I'm already hearing of it happening. And it scares me, right? And I hear of big folks coming in to the Emerald Triangle and then just contacting farmers and saying, hey, you're never going to survive on your own. Come work with me, grow under my brand. And that makes me sad because I feel like a lot of farmers are put in a position where they're like, well, I don't know if I can survive and maybe I need to take this chance. And what we want to do is create an antithesis to that. You know, we want farmers to be able to come in and say, I want to make this into my own oil under my brand. And I want to use this manufacturing facility and to let them do that and to kind of proliferate the state with these small brands that really have individual charm and individual character. That is what I think the next step is. And then kind of also with that is helping the public understand how to maximize the benefits of use. And, you know, right now in other states, we see kind of a spring break mentality where visitors come and they like get on a bus and they go from dispensary to dispensary and they get really high. We want people to come and have a slow cannabis experience. We want them to wake up and have some coffee and to be in a beautiful place and have a discussion about cannabis and then use it together. And what does that mean? And the last thing I'll say is that, you know, something I also tell my students is that cannabis is the plant that you want to be able to use your entire life, because it'll actually be most beneficial to you when you're old. So if you dab your little brains out right now when you're 20, I don't know if you're going to be able to have cannabis be as beneficial as it could be to you when you're 80. So take your time, develop your relationship with cannabis. It's going to be a long, beautiful relationship. It's not a weekend fling. So that's what I really encourage people to think about is like, this is a long-term therapeutic and spiritual practice.
Very good, very good. And the small farmer is involved in that. It's their lifestyle.
Yes,
right?
that they bring that culture.
And that's the artisanal food, the food to farm to table and all that. And we actually want to be in the farmers markets. A little booth there. So,
absolutely.
Right, so that's a picture of the future that we have.
I love it.
We're going. Well, thank you so much, Amanda.
It's
been
my
a delightful
pleasure.
conversation with you. So thank you for joining us on Smokin' with Swami, and we'll see you next time.